Hello everyone. So we are moving slowly now away from assignment 1, which was to teach us how to actually work with the curriculum but in a personally relevant way. So in assignment 1, what we were asked to do is talk about the literacy concept, but also how we actually apply the kinds of ways in which the curriculum talks about literacy into our own experiences. So in our classes, I was saying, I was using phrases like saying that if the curriculum has some concepts which are a bit abstract to you, then that's okay, because this is why we're doing this unit. We're learning to actually name things. Feeling things is one thing, but naming things is the thing that humans do, because once we name it, we can actually talk about it, or we can actually teach to children. So as the curriculum wants us to teach abstract concept to children, we need to actually first develop our own abstract vocabulary. So that's why for assignment 1, what we were looking at is looking at the abstract concepts of the capabilities, and I have now just put on the screen one of them, or just a little snippet of one of them. We have been learning to work with this vocabulary and with these concepts and applying it to our own lives and thinking, how can we talk about our own literacy skills while using the terms that are actually in the curriculum, or specifically in those higher order thinking and thinking skills. Now, so that was until now, and now we are moving more into the idea of actually, which is captured in assignment 2, which is how would we design learning activities to support children's or students' reading. I thought that I might first show you, in order to actually justify to you what I will be showing you today in relation to assignment 2, we might actually, just to set up the scene, have a look at once again at those general capabilities. And I want to make 2 points. The first one is they ain't gonna go away, right? The curriculum ain't gonna go away. We will always have those cross-curricular priorities, and we will also have general capabilities. What they are key concepts on which everything is hanging in the curriculum. So everything you do has to address those capabilities. So that's not gonna go away. So because this unit teaches you how to work with the curriculum and how to learn to understand what the curriculum says, I will be today proposing to you a model. It's a very simple model, though it might look a little bit daunting because of all the squares on them. You have learned a little bit of it by now already, but because of all these squares and everything, it might look a bit daunting. But when you actually start learning to use it for your assignment 2, and some of you may be already for assignment 1, why not? What will happen is that we will get a bit more fluency at it. Now, you don't have to, of course, use my model, but what I will give you, I'll give you some tools that will actually help you to work with these complex concepts from the curriculum, and that's what I will be assessing in assignment 2. I don't want any assignments in assignment 2 that have no reference to the higher order skills and actually integrating higher order skills in activities. This is a unit a unit that teaches you how to do it. I do not want to see some sort of abracadabra method that you might be learning in some workshop, because this is not a unit that teaches you abracadabra. It teaches you actually to creatively work with the curriculum and in a way that shows direct understanding that of how to actually address what the curriculum wants you to actually integrate in your classrooms. Okay, so just to make sure that you actually see the reason why I'm developing these models for you, and hoping that they will be useful for you to use when you are thinking how to design your lessons or your units of work. actually, because we're not teaching in terms of lessons anymore. We actually want those higher order skills integrated, and only a unit of work can do that. Anyway, just to make my point once again, what we did in the on-campus class, we actually read a little bit. This was just on the screen. I didn't actually select it or anything. And you can see how complex. I'm not going to read it for you because you can read it. You can stop the movie and you can actually read it for yourself. But the idea is for you to actually experience what a complex language it is and how hard it is to now think. How do you capture all these thoughts? And there is more of them because there's a text above and there's a text below and there's so many capabilities. How to actually capture all of this in your lesson design. It's not a simple thing. That's why we have ELA 200. Now, I have actually started a lecture last week on our campus with this thought from Pierre Bourdieu, from the sociologist Pierre Bourdieu. Now, Pierre Bourdieu, I have mentioned before, he was a professor in France and he's changed the world in many different ways, and also he has actually rewritten the whole field of sociology. So he's, in a sense, one of the pillars of thinking in philosophy and in sociology. Anyway, this what he's saying here, he's actually come up with this concept, symbolic violence. There may have been people who might have been talking about this concept before. Nevertheless, this term is often attributed to Pierre Bourdieu. And what he's saying is very often we act in a very well-meaning way. We don't want to hurt people. We don't want to hurt animals. But then when people actually look at things, what we actually do to animals, or what we do to children in classrooms, or in other contexts to people, when we actually think about things from different perspectives, we notice that actually our actions might have been actually less thought through than we thought. And he calls it a symbolic violence. Symbolic violence is when we actually act with, work with symbols, symbols which is the kind of messages we pass to people without realizing that we're actually excluding them and hurting them. And one of the reasons why we have these capabilities in the curriculum is for us to actually be, as teachers, to be aware of it and actually work in ways that so that our children become a bit more global, bit more inclusive themselves, and as a result, we build a better society. So Pierre Bourdieu has actually written a number of books with another colleague of his, exploring the context of education and actually exploring how symbolic violence is actually reproduced in schools. And we do it in every manner possible. So we don't see these things because these things are very much covered by what we may call culture, but what it is just basically the ways we've always done things, the ways we've always done things. So now moving on. So this is a kind of intellectual or conceptual context, or even ethical context of the entire unit ELA 200. The way it is taught and the way the requirements in the assignments have been set up. So keep in mind this concept of symbolic violence. Another person, Phil Cormack, I think he by now has retired, I'm not sure, and he was at the University of South Australia, and he's done a nice critical assessment of reading methods. And what he is saying that typically in schools we had this concept of knowledge, then there's a method, and then there were pupils. So basically the idea was, the hope was to invent a method, which is systems of monitoring students, content, and also managing their bodies, right? In Australia, what is it? In 19th century, the children had to sit on benches, and today, what is it? Everybody sits on the carpet. We will get children to sit on the carpet. Goodness gracious, when they move, what do? We panic. I went to a school, primary school, a 7-year-old Aboriginal boy stood up and started doing a rap dance, and the teacher was appalled. The teacher had no skills to actually use it as a resource. The only thing the teacher could think about is to punish the child. Now, I would want to remind you, just in case you forgot how it was when you were 7 or 5, you just could not sit. Well, definitely I couldn't. So just, we need to keep it in mind that our children have energies and they have a life outside of classroom, and they bring that life to the classroom. So anyway, coming back to the symbolic violence, what was happening here, particular type of knowledge as in this Lancaster's model, monitorial model is shown here, particular forms of knowledge were privileged, and then methods, which is the sort of methods which was practices of reproducing ways of organizing people, managing people, were invented, and that method was used to pour the knowledge into children's heads. And yes, and then children were spitting it out at the exams, and all was well. I learned French this way. Well, I got high distinction for all my French units at the University of Queensland, and then I wanted to ring a friend of mine in Paris, and I just couldn't say to him, "Hey, I just learned French. Isn't it wonderful?" I had to speak English or German, whatever I was back then using to talk to my friend. Anyway, so that's the sort of method. Knowledge is someone holds the content, someone knows the content, knows what matters, right? We know what children have to actually reproduce to us. And then we have these pedagogies by Ruma. I call it by Ruma because they just kind of think the way we do things, the way we do things. And then children are objects of it. You can see that the child is not present in the process of selecting of knowledge and in the methodology itself. The child is an object here. All right. So Professor Cormack actually has drawn it now, and all of this is in my other modules, and you can actually listen to it a bit more in detail. But I just wanted to set up the scene. So we have all the students, which is all the red, all the blue circles. All children are looking at one book, be it a manual, how to behave in a factory, or be it a Bible, or be it anything. And the teacher, who is this sort of square here on the top, the teacher monitors children. Do they produce the right version of the reading, right? Now, that was in the 19th century, but I'm sure that some of you are kind of already feeling like, oh my God, I've seen it just recently, right? And I'll prove it to you because nowadays this model looks like this, right? Children in a circle, everybody is looking at the book, and the teacher is monitoring whether everybody is doing the right thing, right? It looks really heavenly, right? We have all this multiracial classroom, the teacher is smiling, children are looking at the book, everybody is attentive. We have actually Aboriginal colors here and probably drawing, so it is quite of inclusive. But the point of the story is, and if you were to actually now move away from these mothery kind of discourses and go back and abstract it, what it looks exactly like this. And I want you to think about it and hold it in your little heads or big heads. Now, direct instruction is basically, if you actually read this text basically, so direct instruction at this is exactly that. It's exactly the same model. And people love it because the reason people love direct instruction is as follows. When we were children, this was done to us. We hated this, but we somehow made it to the university. So now we have seen it so many times done to us, and that we actually have internalized this. And in fact, the reason why these old methods are still sort of being rehashed and redone over and over again, it's because in many different forms. It's because it is so hard to drop an old habit, really hard. So, the teacher comes to the classroom and does introduction and review. Today, children, we will be doing this. What have we done last time? Do you all recognize it? You probably see it in your prac sessions. Okay, well, this is the new content. This is a new book. We will be reading this book. And not only that, they talk about it as if it was a natural sequence. They talk here, if you actually read this text here, they say the basic elements are presentation of a material. They basically say this, what else could you do? What else could you do but this? Well, that's why some people may do PhDs and have professorships in education, because they actually spend time thinking, how the heck can we get out from this? For how long are we going to treat children as if they were objects of our own imagination and of our own control? of the symbolic violence that we actually exert on children. Because you may not know, but when the child is not present in the classroom, has no possibility to actually impact on what they study and how they study, and have there's no personal relevance there made for the child, what happens? The child is kind of rejected. And when you think about it in terms of neuroscience, rejection feels the same as death. Your brain responds to rejection as it responds to pain and death. So they did studies on people, even adults, when they were, what were they doing? Was it passing? It was just a simple thing, passing a ball, I think it was. There was like 5 people, and all of a sudden a few people, and everybody was monitored through those, things, gadgets on their heads, and after a while, this is from David Rock's study, actually. Well, it wasn't his study, he reports on that study in his resilience article, resilience and leadership. I can't remember exactly, like leading with the brain or something like this. Anyway, or managing with the brain. Anyway, so there it is, this research. They passed to each other ball, and after a while, a few people were missed. Like the ball was passed among 3 people or 2 people only, or 2 people. One person basically was rejected. People were not passing the ball to this particular person. And when they actually were monitoring what was happening to this person's limbic system, which is the emotions, the same systems were actually firing as they would if you are experiencing the fear of death or pain. So there you go. That's why sometimes, or most of our experiences, almost students' experiences from classrooms, unless children have different personalities, like a bit more resilient, a bit more sort of pushy or dynamic, most of the time people feel they hate at the school because the teacher was playing their own game and we were just sitting there and kind of coping. So right, so what we will be doing is trying to actually get away from all this, and then so you present the material, then what do? You question children, you do comprehension questions, which is exactly what she's doing here. Where do they say these things? How else can we say it? And a kid who actually has no idea how else we can say it is not answering. So the kid is actually not participating, right? You might actually not participate in one class for 45 minutes, but if it is 6 or 7 hours and you cannot ever engage because you just don't know, or you're not switched on, or you forgot, or it's not kind of relevant to your life, or it's kind of a different culture, what will happen to the child after one day? It doesn't take a week. After 5 minutes, they get disengaged. What about if you just pursue the same methodology for 6 or 7 hours, and then you do it for a whole week, then you do it for the whole semester, for a whole year? Right? You get the picture, right? So this is this sort of thing. The problem, of course, is that children are not in control. It's the teacher who's questioning. The teacher knows what matters because the teacher knows the context, so the teacher knows which questions to ask, and the teacher knows which answers to expect. And right, just interesting. Now, I came with this example because we have been doing this. We were doing the other day this sketch from Rowan Atkinson. I can't remember his name, Mr. Bean, anyway. And he came in and he said, some of you who are more perceptible would have noticed by now that this is hell. And I am the devil. But you can call me Toby. And everybody's dying of laughter, right? The audience, you were laughing, all my students were laughing, and I ask, why are you laughing? What's the meaning of Toby that makes you laugh? And you didn't know what's the meaning of Toby. It took us an hour to find out what's the meaning of Toby. And once we actually decided where we know the meaning, how we actually established this meaning of Toby, we found out that we established it by actually looking elsewhere. Elsewhere, not actually at what Mr. Bean said in his sketch. We were thinking, like, where else have we seen the word Toby that actually these other experiences or associations we bring now into this sketch, and we go, wow, that's funny. As one of our students said, Toby is someone, you can relate to. And that's what's funny, because there's a devil on the one hand, and his name is Toby. Devil you can't relate to, and Toby, someone you can relate to, right? So that sort of contrast was really funny. And I was saying other things that's what comedy does. Comedy creates these junctions, whereas persuasive talk actually creates junctions, right? So I have discussed it in another lecture, so I'm not going to go there. But there we go. So what you could see now, that if she had this word here, my name is, and you can call me Toby, right? So imagine that one of these letters here is a sentence that says, but you can call me Toby. And she says, what does Toby mean? The meaningful teacher. And the children say, well, it's a name. Yes, right? Will she follow up and ask them, why are you laughing? If she did, what would be the answer? She would say, what does Toby mean that everyone is laughing? And the kids, where would they look? They would look back for some associations, right? But maybe some kids would not know that they should be doing this because they're still small. They're not trained to do it. Like you all were laughing in the class or in the lecture, but nobody could actually tell me why you were laughing when he said Toby, right? Because these things are so automatized in us that when I asked you to think abstractly now, nobody had the methodology. Not only that, on top of it, we have actually Aboriginal children, we have Polish children, we have Afghani children, we have all kinds of children from different backgrounds and from different ways of actually thinking. That in this class, if she said, so what is so funny about Toby, she might have only gotten an answer maybe from one person, if that. We didn't get an answer for an hour. And we had mainly native speakers of English in our on-campus class. What was it, 30 of us there? Right? It wasn't like 3 people I was talking to. So it's very important. All this stuff, present. We will come in, we will introduce, we will present, and we will question, and then everything will be good, and we'll give you a homework, and then you will just know it, right? So as soon as we just work with real life material, the whole methodology breaks down because we just can't say how we're gonna teach children what the word Toby means and why is it so funny in this context. Now I will give you here in this PowerPoint a link to this funny sketch. It's another direct instruction kind of thing. This woman is teaching. This is a real movie. I don't know if you come from Australia, so you might have not seen this movie because Europeans are more open to movies from outside, whereas Australians and Americans are not very good at showing movies from Europe. Sometimes SBS shows movies, but I don't know. Anyway, this is a Pink Panther, and this guy is really funny. He's a French comedian, and she's teaching him to say an English sentence because he's gonna be a spy in America. And she's teaching him how to say, I would like to buy a hamburger. And you can imagine she's saying to him, I would like to buy a hamburger. And he's saying, we would. I don't know. I can't pretend the French accent, but it's hilarious. And they go on like this for, well, this is a short video for 1 minute 50 seconds. But actually, I think in the original, they just went on and on and on. It just was never ending. She was crying, he was crying. And there it was, presenting materials and requiring a response. What's in her mind and what's in his mind is not the same mind. So there is not mind melding, so it's really hard. So what I will be teaching you actually, and you probably have seen in other videos in different modules, what I will propose to you today is a tool. And then you can see how you can actually position yourself to it, but basically this is the situation. So this is a model of learning that I support and that I will be showing you how it works in relation to the curriculum. But that thing when it says students or teams, that sort of circle in the middle, imagine this, the children in this classroom with the teacher here, right? When she says, what does Toby mean? They have now access to different texts where they can check. She can actually show them Toby is a child. Toby might be a toy. Toby might be, this and this and this. She might actually show what Toby is not. So George might actually be a King George. So there's no King Toby, right? Because if there was a Toby King, they would have called him Tobias, right? So through contrasting examples, she could actually give them some building blocks for children to contrast in understanding why. But you can call me Toby. My name is, and I am the devil, but you can call me Toby. Now, by having actually explored different situations in which Toby or the other names like James or George, right, are used, they could actually understand why Mr. Bean didn't say, and I am the devil, but you can call me George, right? It wouldn't be as funny. And why? Because these particular names are actually, they come with culture. So there were kings with the name George, there were kings with the name James, but there was no King Toby, right? So that's why. So the model is basically exploratory, where you can see the children as they actually engage in their projects. This is maybe the project is not. The children want to create a project, which is what I call a text here on the right, but it's actually a project. They want to do so. I call it text for because just I use quite an abstract language usually when I teach and when I write. But so the text stands for a project, something they want to produce, whether a play or anything. But in order to actually do that, they actually have to explore resources in order to actually find out how to do things and what things mean. Like in an example of my name is, but you can call me Toby. So in order to actually understand text and in order to actually understand their own text, they have to explore things. So that's why we have this exploration on the left. They have a product they are producing, which is this particular thing, whatever. They might themselves produce a comedy sketch where they are the devil and their name is maybe even a funnier version, than of a name than Toby. I'm sure the kids can come up with funny things. And then the colorful dots on the right, or circles, they're basically the audience, because every action is always oriented. It's a response. It's a response, and it's towards someone. So we don't just talk. I don't just talk now. I know to whom I'm talking to. You I talk one way to someone else, like maybe a colleague who is a professor from some university or from our university. I would say the whole thing in one sentence, right? I wouldn't need 27 slides. So, right, the way we talk and so, however we talk, however we actually construct things is always because there's a purpose, and this purpose is so that the other person actually gets it or gets it the way that our message has a desired impact. So we have basically a model here, which in some other lectures which I have created and you have online, I call it you take in understandings from the world and you then give it to the world. So it's from the world to the world, basically. But that world has to exist. It cannot be this. There is no world. There's just one book and the teacher who is basically the knower of everything, like in here. This world has to exist, has to be integrated. So how is it going to be integrated, this world? As I said before, children have to have access to materials when they can actually have a look how the word Toby is used, and other words, non-Tobys, are used so that they can, through contrast, develop an understanding of why people appreciate Toby, the word Toby, or understand the word Toby in particular ways, not but in other ways. Now, I have spoken in other lectures, and this is again the sort of general structure that I usually say is that every lesson or every lesson, but every lesson is what you see on the right is basically part of the project. So a unit of work is a series of lessons that are about engaging a student or groups of students in a project. So they create a project. And lessons are basically activities that enable children to engage the support you create. And that's what our assignment 2 is about, right? So the support you create so that children can actually perform the project. Children can't just perform a project. Children can't just create a story. They need to actually have some building blocks to learn how to create a story. So how are you going to do that? If the project is to create a play or create a story or create a poster, how are they going to know how to do it? They have to have support systems, some sort of things like with Toby, some kind of context, some kind of, I call them in abstract way, events, so that they actually, those texts, they compare and contrast, and they learn how to actually create a poster and how not to create a poster. So they learn about the elements, they explore different building blocks, they put something together that is relevant to them, and they actually can complete the project. So your lessons are about activities that enable children to use the materials that others support so that they can complete the project. That's in a nutshell. So the model is about enabling children's explorations. So there are 3 steps in the model actually. Well, the one that I'm not mentioning is here, but you actually have to make it possible, right? But I'll just get to it as we go. So the teaching model or the activities that that you have in the model that I propose are basically three. Children explore, then the children, as they explore, they identify the things that are relevant to their project. They explore different things and they say, okay, so we've seen all of this, we played with things, play different play than just playing with dough. This is like children play for a purpose. Okay, we want to do this, now we're playing here, we're trying to explore things. Okay, so stage 2 is now, okay, we've seen things, now how is that relevant to us? So their explorations were already driven by the question, what's relevant to us? But now they actually have to make a decision in stage 2. Okay, so what are we going to take out of this? And you will see that when you actually enable children to make these independent decisions, what will happen that they might actually play with different genres or with different types of ways of doing things, because there is no one way of producing a poster. That's how genres get invented, right? We were in a cave and we had every genre possible already under the sun. We were creating them, like the music, now is a rap, and then there's some other things that now, I mean, I don't watch television, nor do I watch music stuff, because I do other things nowadays. But we have different types of music now, and they build on the past, but they're different. They now play with different genres of music and they create new things. So as children actually make a decision, and as they make a decision about what is it that is relevant for their project, they might actually go back to the explore phase again and just check once again. Then they have to actually evaluate, right? They will evaluate, well, now we're happy with it. They might actually, you might create activities that they in the group evaluate. Yep, we're happy. We sort of fought with one another a bit, but it's okay. It's a group work. We understand why we're happy. Then they might actually present it to the class. And then you as a teacher might create a whole class activity whereby you can actually now provide feedback. And children might go back a little bit to the drawing board and reassess or provide feedback so that they can just make minor changes or bigger changes or just say it's all fine. Okay, so these are the 3 steps. It's very simple. The model has only 3 steps. But none of this is possible unless you actually prepare what normally in the computer people's language, in pedagogy we call resources, but this is now in education, this is so mixed up. So I have to use a different term, which I call materials. You have to prepare materials so that children can explore them and identify what they found in it relevant and so on, right? So you have to actually prepare. You can't walk into the classroom just with one book, because if you did, you don't do this, you do this. Or this, same thing, right? With one book, if you come in, that is, we're all looking at the book, right? Now, we have discussed over the last so many weeks the concept of engagement, right? Because we don't just walk in and say to children, we will now decide on the project, so let's actually explore these materials that I have produced for you so that, you can do what I want you to do, or, what's good for you. And one of the strategies I have actually shown you was actually to engage children through their iPads and through the smartboard in actually exploring their community. So, they play on the playgrounds, or you've taken them from the swimming pool or something, and you actually are going to look at the maps, and then you can actually show them different maps as well, but maybe not necessarily as in an engagement phase. Those other things you might actually do if you actually use them for unit of work. But one of them is to engage them in the exploration of the map, exploration of their community, and community in relation to other countries. So that's all right. They might do some games to have a look how the community looks like. So different buildings, different people there, and then they might find out that some children in the community are actually watching or reading a book, which, for example, here I just pulled it from my past experiences with my students, The Lion and the Mouse. Now, it is not necessary that the unit of work has to look like this, because you could have easily taken on this concept of the village, and then children could have explored the materials in the village and that you actually would prepare, and children could actually create stories about their own village. But now what I ask myself and I ask our students, because typically what I get from different schools when I look at things, typically I get this methodology of the direct instruction. The teacher comes in, shows the book to the children, they all look at the book cover. They don't look at the book cover and then Aboriginal book covers and the Indian book covers and they don't even explore oral stories which have no book cover, right? To compare and contrast. This is just we're looking at this book cover, okay? We're looking at right. So I ask myself, if I had a situation where we actually wanted to look in detail at one text, because there are situations where we actually want to have a look in detail at one text. So what will we do? Obviously, I am against, and you will know that against this for many reasons. There's no creativity, there is no student involvement, there is no capabilities in it. There's right. So there. So we have this lion and the mouse. Now I have in other module, I mean in the modules, but inside there, I have actually given you some ideas about how to actually engage children in the reading of a text. It doesn't have to actually be the teacher fronting up the children and actually reading for them. There are other ways that I would like you to actually to explore, because that other one is the easiest one, and it's the thing that nannies and mothers do. But we are teachers. We need to actually think in the long term what impact we want to have on children. So actually reading to children at text is actually the least favorable activity that I would actually want to say, because in any event, in assignment 2, you have to actually support children's reading, not your own reading. You already know how to read. So I asked myself, okay, so how would we actually use capabilities in a situation that we actually want to build on the story, in a situation where we want to create a unit of work which builds on this story? And to cut the long story short, you actually will have on the PowerPoint the text of the story, just in case you haven't read it. But basically, the storyline is that the lion is learning a lesson about what it means to be nice and friendly, right? Well, first the mouse annoys him and he says, I could kill you. But when she says, oh, no, no, you're the greatest, don't kill me. And he lets her go, or him, whatever. And then one day the mouse comes back and she sees the lion, because in Polish the mouse is she, so I call it she, right? But it could be he. So the mouse finds the lion captured in a net, and then the lion cannot free himself, and the mouse says, not to worry, we will help you. And the mouse calls all the friends the mouse has in the forest, and all these friends come and bites through the ropes of the net, and the lion is free. And now he has learned a lesson that sometimes, even though a mouse is really small and weak, actually through collaboration the mouse is strong. And also not to underestimate your friends, right? Basically that's the message. Do not underestimate your friends. Anybody could one day be of help. So we have to be nice to each other, because we all are in it together, right? That's it. So I asked myself, how would we actually work with it to actually for this little story, and how I would work with students for them to engage in the reading of a story. I might actually be a bit more detailed next week. We have covered it in on-campus class, so you might actually ask some of your on-campus colleagues to actually write on LearnLine what I said. But some of the ideas are already in the modules, so you actually can find out by watching other videos. But nevertheless, so basically the idea is the kids have gone through all these activities. They actually have read the story, they know about it, and it doesn't matter. They could be 5 years old, they could be 6, 7, 8, 15. I don't care. Same methodology. Well, sort of. So they've done the reading, and now the idea is, how can we actually from this story now move on to engage children in some worthwhile project. So you have seen